Welcome to You Can Recover, the podcast where each episode brings you one step closer to making peace with food and body. I'm your host, Andrea Wells, and I know firsthand what it's like to live with and recover from an eating disorder. Now, I'm here to help you along the road to living a new life on your terms, not your eating disorders. So let's dive in and find new ways to thrive as you end the war with food and body, because you can recover. Hello, and welcome back to You Can Recover. Thank you for joining me for another episode. Today, we are exploring the question, how long does eating disorder recovery take? And I know that can be top of mind when you are in recovery and you just want to feel better. You just want to know, how long is this going to take? How long until I am free from constantly worrying about food and body? And recovery in itself can stir up a lot of intense emotions and some levels of grief as well. And these things are difficult to feel and to move through. So it only makes sense that you want to know, when are things going to get easier? When does this end? When does the good part happen? And all the good stuff that everyone talks about with feeling peace with your body and freedom with food. So we're going to explore that today and try and find out just how long eating disorder recovery takes. Because having a clearer idea of the timeline can help bring you clarity on what it is that you're working towards and more motivation to work towards that goal when you have an idea of what you're in for in terms of a time commitment. And there are many different factors to explore and take into consideration when figuring out how long recovery takes. And we will explore those factors too. But first, I wanted to check in and say thank you for all of the support for You Can Recover so far. So we technically soft launched back in December, a little over a month ago. But with our most recent episode, that was when we officially hard launched to the public. And I am so touched by all the support, the kind words, and the feedback. So thank you for listening and sharing and following and subscribing. Thank you for letting me know what you've loved about the show so far and what you'd like to hear more of or maybe see done differently. Your engagement and feedback, it really means the world to me. So thank you. And it also helps me to make sure that this series is the best that I can be for you. I am here to help you recover. And if there's any way that you can help me help you, please let me know. Keep in touch, keep communicating. I want to hear from you. You can contact me on Instagram at YouCanRecoverPod, or you can email me at youcanrecoverpod@gmail.com, and I will put the links to those in the episode notes. Or if you're listening on Spotify or YouTube Music, you can comment directly on the episode in the comment section. So thank you for keeping in touch so far, and I can't wait to keep getting to know each other and going on this journey together. And I also want to give a quick update in terms of episode frequency. I know I talked a bit about that a couple episodes ago. So I'm confirming now that with the official hard launch of You Can Recover, I will indeed be moving to bi-weekly releases as of now. I think that strikes a good balance of being able to deliver you regular recovery content and also keeping my own sanity with balancing a podcast and my job and just taking care of life and myself. So yeah, every other week you can look forward to a new episode. And if that frequency changes in the future, I will let you know. So thanks again for everything so far and for listening and engaging with You Can Recover. And I also want to take a quick moment to plug a new song that came out recently that I think is really cool and pro eating disorder recovery. Listening to it has helped me feel more steadfast and empowered with recovery. It's really cool to hear a popular artist sing about this kind of stuff. And I wanted to share it with you so you can take a listen and maybe it can encourage you too. So the song is from a band called Aly and AJ. And if you know me, you might have just rolled your eyes right now because I'm obsessed with Aly and AJ. They are my favorite band. I'm surprised it's taken me 5 episodes to mention them, but it hasn't been on topic until now. Now it's relevant to eating disorder recovery. They released a new song. It's called What It Feels Like. And listening to the lyrics, it's so cool. It's all about, accepting body changes and aging and accepting yourself for who you are, no matter what you look like, and kind of, saying F you to societal beauty standards. And that's really what eating disorder recovery is all about. So I just love hearing that in the song. I will link to it in the episode notes. And the song touches on something as well that I'm going to dive into more here on the series in the future, which is the topic of aging and body image. And it's so relevant to recovery. I think a lot of people think of obviously weight and body size when talking about beauty standards and body liberation and making peace with your body. And that's so true. And another thing is aging. There's so many parallels between like the way people feel about their bodies when it comes to aging and weight. And ultimately, these are both just things that are natural and okay, but society and certain industries make us feel like we need to do everything we can to fight against these things. But it's okay. It's okay to age. It's okay to have your body change. And that's why I love this song because it totally captures that. Allie and AJ are like awesome eating disorder recovery advocates. They've done a lot of work with eating disorder nonprofit Project Heal. They are awesome. So yeah, I'll link to that song. And if you know of any other songs from anyone, not just my favorite band, but from anyone that has messages around this kind of stuff or that kind of translate over to recovery, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to share more music like this. I'm a music fan, and it's so cool to have that crossover with recovery messages. Now let's dive into the episode and find out, how long does eating disorder recovery take? So, how long does eating disorder recovery take? Well, it'll depend on a lot of things. It'll depend on who you ask, and there's several different viewpoints and factors to consider, so let's explore all of them. And for the purpose of this episode, when it comes to the question of how long recovery takes, let's consider recovery to mean the point at which someone no longer meets the diagnostic criteria for an eating disorder. So, turning to trusty Google, if you type in the question, how long does eating disorder recovery take? The first thing that comes up is a little blurb from the National Eating Disorder Association, also known as NEDA. They are the largest eating disorder nonprofit. And I know that NEDA has had some controversy in recent years. Their definition here, I do think it's relevant and clear. So according to NEDA, quote, recovery from an eating disorder can take months, even years. Slips, backslides, and relapse tend to be the rule rather than the exception. Cessation of disordered eating behaviors and learning coping skills can take a long time and often requires a lot of support from professionals, friends, and family. End quote. So according to NEDA, recovery can take months or years. And this echoes a lot of other resources as well. I remember when I first started recovery, I heard this statistic repeated to me a lot, which was that recovery takes an average of 7 years. And I don't know exactly where that statistic came from, but I remember hearing it repeated a lot. And when I would hear that recovery takes 7 years, I would feel like a duality of feelings. On one hand, I'd be like, okay, 7 years. That gives me an idea of what to expect and what I'm in for and where I'm headed. And then also, on the other hand, there's this feeling of like, dang, 7 years? That's a long time. And it was kind of discouraging to hear. Am I really going to be feeling this awful and struggling this intensely for that long for 7 more years? I wish I could go back and tell myself, like, hey, I know it's scary to hear that recovery could take a while, but no, you're not going to be feeling this severe of a struggle for up to 7 years to feel better. It's going to get better along the way, a little bit at a time. Recovery is not linear. Some days are going to feel like 2 steps forward, and others are going to feel like a step back, but you are making progress. I would say that I stopped meeting the criteria for an eating disorder around the 3 or 4 year mark. But I also think it's cool that NEDA and some other resources say that recovery can take months. That's definitely the shorter end of things based on what I've seen from all the people that I've met and worked with in recovery. I'm not going to say that it's impossible to recover that quickly because it's not. Everyone is wired differently and has different histories. I would say temper your expectations. Months is not the rule. I think typically it is more like years. It's really hard to say. There's so many factors. And let's take a look at the different factors that can affect how long recovery takes. So one factor to consider is the type of eating disorder that you have. There are different diagnoses, different symptoms. There's anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder, OSFED, otherwise specified food and eating disorder. and ARFID, avoidant and restrictive food intake disorder. These can have different symptoms, different recovery times, different treatment modalities. So that can certainly come into play in terms of length of recovery. Another factor is the severity of your eating disorder. Eating disorders exist on a spectrum. They can range from mild to severe, and this can certainly affect how long recovery takes as well. Another factor affecting recovery time is any co occurring mental health conditions that you might be experiencing. Most people with eating disorders also are experiencing some other type of mental health struggle like depression, anxiety, OCD, substance use disorders, trauma disorders. Treating these conditions can help improve the chances and timeline of your recovery as well. I know for me, doing trauma therapy along with eating disorder recovery and also addressing addiction and finding sobriety, these were all key parts of my eating disorder recovery. And another factor affecting how long recovery takes is access to treatment. There's different healthcare systems, and within those systems, everyone has different access levels to eating disorder treatments. Every region, country, town has something different to offer in terms of like therapy, medication, treatment centers, and support groups. And this can certainly affect how long recovery takes for you. It's kind of unfortunate sometimes. There are some people out there who really want the help and are really committed but don't have access to the resources. That doesn't mean you can't get better. That doesn't mean you can't find recovery. There certainly are other ways to heal and find support, but access to treatment is absolutely a factor to consider. And also keep in mind that like treatment length, like actual medical eating disorder treatment, does not necessarily equal recovery time, like the whole recovery journey, if that makes sense. If you listen to the first episode of You Can Recover, I shared a little bit about my recovery journey, and I mentioned that I did a 14-week treatment program. By no means was recovery done at that time. It was an excellent foundation to lay. There was more work to be done. So keep that in mind as well. Just because you may have successfully completed a treatment program, it doesn't mean you're totally out of the woods yet. And I don't mean that in a discouraging way. I just mean that as keep going. You're off to an amazing start. And another factor affecting a timeline for recovery is compliance with treatment. So if you do have access to eating disorder treatment and you're participating, your compliance to it is a big factor in your success. So that includes like attending therapy sessions, taking any medications as prescribed, following a treatment plan. This can certainly speed up the recovery process, and straying away from them might make things take a little longer. And one big factor affecting recovery timelines is your motivation and willingness to change. If you are motivated to recover and willing to make changes, you're likely going to have a faster recovery than those who are more resistant to change. I know some people who are so jazzed and ready to dive into recovery and do all the things that they need to do, and that's amazing. Be careful though, too, because on the other side of that is going a little too much too fast. You don't want to burn out or try to be perfect at recovery, because that's a common trap we can fall into in recovery as well. There is a difference between like healthy motivation and unhelpful overachieving and perfectionism. So keep that in mind too. Sometimes slow and steady wins the race. And it's also totally okay if you just don't feel super excited or motivated for recovery. That's so normal. Recovery is ambivalent. It can be difficult. A lot of people have one foot in and one foot out. If you feel like you struggle with motivation or commitment to recovery, just know that that is so normal and that is okay. It doesn't mean that you're wrong or a failure or doing bad in recovery. This ambivalence really is the name of the game a lot of the time. And still, with that ambivalence, you can continue to make progress. Another factor to consider in how long recovery takes is social support. Having a strong support system can help improve the chances of a successful recovery. So if you have friends or family that you can open up to who get it and are understanding of the challenges of recovery, or if you can find a support group, whether that's online or in person, or following social media accounts, and help keep you on track on your recovery timeline. Let's celebrate a recovery win on You Can Recover. Today, we are celebrating a recovery win from You Can Recover community member Cassie. Cassie shares, quote, "I saw that I gained some back fat when I looked in the mirror today, and my first reaction was guilt. And I thought, I need to lose that. But then I realized, no, I don't. It's perfectly normal for my body to want to store fat. Why do I care so much about a normal part of my body that so many others have as well? Well, it's because I grew up seeing others care about these things. But why do they care? What made us as humans care so much about a functioning body? It drives me crazy that so many people are raised to be so judgmental about bodies from such an early age. I'd rather celebrate having a functioning body and access to food to nourish myself. Why did I spend so long being at war with my body when our bodies are keeping us alive? Hell, all six of my cats are all different shapes and sizes, ranging from slim to big, and I don't see them giving a crap. Those fluffy butts just go about their day without a care in the world about how they look, and I flipping love that. I learn a lot from my cats, and one lesson from them that I will forever remember is every body is different, and that's okay. If my back needs some fat, then it gets some, because guess what? I need it. And I'm sick of feeling so much shame for having skin. Just be like a cat. Go eat and take a nap. You deserve it. End quote. Cassie, you are a cat loving recovery icon. And I love, first of all, that you have six cats. That is amazing. Sounds like a cat heaven. And I love that you're taking lessons of nourishment and body neutrality from your kitties. And I'm so glad that you have this win to celebrate and recognizing that it's totally okay to have a little extra fat on your back. Your body needed it. It's all good. Thank you, Cassie, for sharing your floofy inspired recovery win. That was this week's recovery win with You Can Recover. If you're celebrating a recovery win of your own, let me know. I want to share it and shout it from the rooftops for you. Let's celebrate together. Nothing is too big or too small to share. Get in touch with me at You Can Recover Pod on Instagram. Slide into my DMs. Let me know your recovery wins, or reach out to me by email at youcanrecoverpod@gmail.com. The second last factor affecting how long recovery takes is how long you've had an eating disorder. Research does suggest that early detection and intervention can significantly contribute to better outcomes when it comes to recovery. At the same time, full recovery can absolutely happen at any age and any stage. I have met people who had been trying their hand at recovery for decades and never quite making the progress that they wanted. But suddenly, all the right factors line up and that change can still happen. I've seen it happen with people in their 50s and their 60s and up. It's absolutely possible. It's never too late. So even though early detection can certainly help, it doesn't mean you can't recover if you're not caught early. I struggled with an eating disorder from age 12 to almost 30. That's more than half my life. And it doesn't matter if you're 15 or you're 95, you're absolutely capable of recovering and building a new life and a better life. And the last thing that can affect how long recovery takes is relapse prevention. Developing prevention and relapse strategies can help prevent setbacks and speed up the recovery process. And I do want to take a moment here to dive deeper into the topic of relapses because they will happen. That is a normal part of the process. Relapses are guaranteed. And I know that is such a bummer to hear. I know that on those days where you feel like you've been doing so good at recovery and you're not using behaviors, and then you feel like you slipped up or that you had a relapse, it just makes you feel like all your progress has been thrown out the window and like your timeline resets, you go back to zero, you're back to square one. And I know that feels so disappointing. But please know you're not back to square one. These ups and downs are a key part of the recovery process. Like, think about it. If you are in a place where you are using eating disorder behaviors every day, and then you don't for a couple weeks or a couple days or a couple hours, and then you go back to those old habits again, that's an amazing accomplishment. That's incredible. Even if you do go back to those old habits again, that's okay. You've thrown a wrench in that cycle. And these patterns, they don't get broken overnight. You don't go from having an eating disorder to not having one, like with the snap of your fingers. Unfortunately, this back and forth is normal, but you did not fail. You're not back to square one. If I considered my recovery like completely reset Anytime that I slipped up or I had a relapse, I would technically only be in recovery for 4 years now instead of almost 8. Those first 4 years were a lot of ups and downs. But if I had considered myself starting over, resetting the clock at every relapse, that would be super discouraging, first of all. Certainly would not make me feel very motivated for recovery. But I look at recovery as more higher concept than am I using behaviors or am I not? Overall, recovery to me is a commitment to getting better, to knowing that there's going to be relapses and ups and downs, and to growing and learning and giving yourself grace and compassion when things don't go as you hoped and trying again. That's successful recovery. And those relapses are an integral part of the process. As much as they suck, as much as they feel like a gut punch at times, remember that they are so normal. You literally cannot have recovery without relapse. So when you feel like you slipped up, remember that in order to have that slip up, that means that you had to be doing something different and recovery promoting to even get to a place where a relapse was possible. So that's a win. Hell yeah, for shaking up your routine, and hell yeah for that period of progress, even if it didn't last as long as you'd hoped. Know that every relapse is an opportunity to gain knowledge, take some lessons from what happened and make your recovery stronger. Make note of where things got difficult and what thoughts and feelings and situations led to the relapse, because this information will help you for the next relapse, because there will be a next time, and that's okay. You really do just have to get back up, dust yourself off, and try again, as they say. And I truly don't mean any of this in a toxic positivity kind of way. And it's kind of sounding like it. It's like, oh, it's all good, just keep going, which is true. But I want to acknowledge too that it's so normal to feel that pain and disappointment and frustration and hopelessness during a relapse, because it's just so exciting and liberating to feel like you've been making progress and you're like, dang, this is awesome. Like, look at me go. Maybe things really can get better. Maybe I really can recover from an eating disorder. And then, bam, a relapse happens. You get knocked off your feet and you feel like all that progress was for nothing and it's never going to get better. What's the point of even trying? It's a very low place to be. And I know it's common to blame yourself too when that happens. Honor that pain, honor that disappointment. It is real, it's valid, it sucks. And throw in a little self compassion too. This stuff is hard. Recovery is hard, but you're not a screw up. You didn't do anything wrong. You are a human working to overcome what can be a debilitating and all encompassing mental illness that no one asks for. You are doing your best in difficult circumstances. So take a moment to breathe, recollect, rest, and regroup. And when you're ready, take one more step forward. Keep building on the progress that you had made before that relapse. Know that another one will come again. And I know that's unpleasant to hear. This relapse and recovery cycle can make you feel like you are just being thrashed around in the waves, but it is a cycle that you're breaking. So keep throwing that wrench in those cycles. The cycle will get more and more off track, and soon recovery will be the new normal, not relapses. Those gaps between relapses will get longer and longer until one day you look back and it's been a year since you had a relapse, or maybe one day even years since you last used eating disorder behaviors. And in the meantime, know that breaking these patterns, even if it's just for a day or part of the day, that is huge progress. So, how long does recovery take? No one knows. And that's hard. It's so hard to have that uncertainty about what recovery might look like or how long it'll take to get there. And I wish I could tell you so badly. I wish I could tell you exact answers about those things. The best way to get those answers is to move forward and find out. And I can't wait to find out with you. And while this episode is all about how long recovery takes, I want to end it by saying it doesn't really have to matter that much. I know you want to feel better, but one of the most helpful things you can do is just forget about the clock or the calendar and, wondering about at what point will recovery happen, because you're already finding it. The fact that you're listening to this episode shows that you are already in the realm of recovery. Maybe not as far as you want to be, but you're there, you're started. What matters is not so much the timeline, but again, focusing on what you've accomplished already. like listening to this episode. You can't tell me you haven't done something promoting recovery because you're here listening to this. So celebrate that. You will make small improvements along the way, and that load will lessen and ease up as you go. Look back on how far you've come rather than this abstract, uncertain idea of how far you have left to go, because it doesn't matter. Recovery is a process. What matters is you keep going and allowing yourself to rest and regroup when needed. Expect those relapses, learn from them, honor your pain and frustration when they happen, and know that it's all so normal and that recovery is possible. It takes time. How much time? We'll see. Thanks for listening in to this episode of You Can Recover. Remember, recovery takes time, and you're one step closer after listening today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with someone else in your life who is working to make peace with food and body. Until next time, be kind to yourself, and remember, you can recover.